Renekton, the rage-fueled crocodile that's a bruiser. His arch enemy is Nasus, and although being a strong top laner, Nasus eventually wins the late game. On top of this, Renekton is not played as often in low elo. With all this being said, then what is it that makes Renekton so strong? We shall answer this question by first going over his fighting capabilities. So, two pivotal parts of the game are team fights and solo fights. How well does Renekton's abilities do against these two types of fights? I.e., how much damage does he do, and his CC control, and is he tanky? Well, his Q does AoE damage and heals him, which is great for both type of fights. His empowered W stun makes him great for team fights, and his E ability gives him a small dash or a double dash, which again is great for both types of fights. Finally, his ult in team fights makes him more tanky and does AoE damage around him, which is always a good factor. All these things also allow him to 1v1 super well, on top of having an impact on team fights, which means he is very capable of winning fights and carrying games. Therefore, this is one of the main reasons why he is very strong, as when it comes to team and solo fighting, his kit is close to perfect for this. Now, Renekton's item spikes should never be underrated. Even though Gore Drinker isn't as strong as the other items, it still works well on Renekton. Depending on the items completed, Renekton will either gain more healing or kill pressure. The main items chosen to be built on Renekton are Gore Drinker, Stride Breaker and Cleaver, where Gore Drinker gives a healing active for a better chance to outtrade the opponent. Stride Breaker is built for kill pressure, and Cleaver for enemies that are tanky and you still want to have kill pressure. One 3 item build you could go is Gore Drinker to the ideal boots to Cleaver. And then for a full build, you could add Steraks Gauge, a MR item, and then any tanky armor item. You could also mix in a Guardian Angel if you want to swap out any of these items for it. The key effect for each item is to do more damage or be tanky, or do both. So always take this into consideration when choosing items. As a result of this, these benefits Renekton gets are one of the reasons why he is a strong champion. In terms of elo, Renekton is super strong in low elo, but is not played or is not known how to be played in this elo. So we can't really talk about how good he is in this low elo unless we're basing it on the fact when he is played, and even then it's not to his full potential. So moving on to mid elo, which in my opinion is his most dominant elo, as players know how to play him much better and actually use him close to his full potential. He's able to win early, win lanes he's supposed to win, and have a strong presence in the mid game to carry the game out for a win. At high elo, Renekton is still good, providing crowd control, damage and tankiness in team fights. Although here players are more aware of his strengths in lane and how to play against him in team fights and solo fights. This brings us to the conclusion that Renekton is good in all elos, as it really doesn't matter which elos he's picked in, due to the fact of his abilities being impactful in any team fight, and this adds to why Renekton is seen as such a strong champion. Level spikes. Just as crucial as anything else are Renekton's level spikes. Renekton is more of an early game champion than late game. He can push champions in while also having kill pressure, especially with Ignite. Just a quick note, all of Renekton's abilities have an empowered version at 50 Fury. Now, at level 1, Renekton usually takes Q first or E, and he can hold his own against many champions, especially with Ignite. At level 2, his trading becomes better, where he can E in to initiate the trade, hit his combo, and then E out, usually resulting in a favorable trade for Renekton. Level 3 is where he really hits his spike. He has a nice empowered W, and again he can trade in, do his full combo and then E out. Just an example of a combo would be E onto the enemy or minions, auto Q W, then E out. Renekton's ultimate is another huge spike for Renekton. His ult gives him extra HP and extra AoE damage, which in turn gives him more kill pressure and survivability. Level 11 is another great spike for his mid game, where he becomes even stronger as he has 2 ranks on his ult and a maxed Q or W. One thing we should mention is that at his early levels, Renekton has a slight weakness, being his cooldowns of E and W. Taking all of this into consideration, he still has a strong early game and a great mid game while being a presence in the late game. Therefore, it's no question Renekton's level spikes are definitely one of the main reasons he is so strong. The ever-changing matchups. You can't talk about matchups without bringing up his arch enemy and brother Nasus. This matchup is also a rough guideline to other matchups, where Renekton will win early game due to his early game kit as mentioned earlier, but eventually Nasus will win the late game. This is due to Nasus's late game hard scale and the fact that Renekton isn't as strong in the late game. Renekton will also have matchups where he will lose the early game. Matchups such as Olaf and Tahm Kench. These are also some of his counters, but he will still be able to farm or be in range of XP. So it's not all too bad. He also has his share of matchups where he will dominate, such as Set and Riven. For the full list, you can always check op.gg, click on the counters section, and you will see all his counters. You will also see his win rates and lane kill rates for those champions. Now, is matchups a part of why he's strong? Yes and no. Let me explain. As mentioned, he has a variety of matchups, meaning he must know how most of them play out, or he will end up losing them and become a liability for the team, which means he's only as strong as the player's knowledge of the matchups. To finalize, matchups are probably joined as the most important thing that decides why Renekton is so strong, with the other being his level spikes and his kit. His level spikes are undoubtedly one of the reasons that he is so strong. It gives him so much early game pressure and so much kill pressure, where players who aren't as experienced and even players who are experienced will still end up giving him kills, which leads to his mid game snowballing effect.